Kentucky Derby 150 is shortly upon us within the next couple of days, whatever time you're watching this video. I'm going to give you guys my 4 selections for the upcoming Kentucky Derby. Just a disclaimer, this is not gambling or wagering advice at all. This is just for educational purposes, and this is just based off of my research on horses that I'm looking forward to in this upcoming Derby. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and run through the order, and then I will break down each horse very briefly in regards to why I think there are horses to pay more attention to. Of course, I think Fierceness obviously still as the morning line favorite, currently going off at 5-2 as of today, which is Tuesday. He will have post position number 17. Second for me would be Catching Freedom. Actually, they're reversed, but Catching Freedom, post position number 4, going off at the morning line odds of 8-1, so not a bad price on Catching Freedom. Coming out of post position number 2 is Sierra Leone, going off of a very short price of 3-1. That's my third selection. Wish that price would obviously change a little bit, but if it stays that way, I don't think it'd be wise to probably look at that horse in any sort of winning fashion, maybe as a roundup for an exacta or try or even super. And last but not least, the horse from Japan, Forever Young, post position number 11. Good morning line odds currently of 10-1. That's my 4th selection. So 17-4, which you can reverse those two, because I like Catching Freedom just a little bit more than Fierceness, I have to be honest. But actually, I'll go 4, 17, 2, and 11. So without further ado, let me get into the first horse, which is Fierceness, which again is the current post-time favorite. Obviously, the best horse in the field, more likely than not, because of his dominating performances, which could in essence be putting a little bit of rose-tinted glasses on what Fierceness will actually be capable of once we get to the Derby. He appears to have mood swings depending on the race circumstances and pace. With 2 subpar performances, I think he'll truly be tested in this Derby. Again, I do think he's the best horse overall, but will Fierceness show up that we want to see show up? Will that horse go out, control the pace, handle what he needs to handle in the race, dominate, and get through to the finish line in first place? I don't think everybody feels the same way. So Fierceness, again, looks like the best horse in the field, but also appears to kind of be off and on depending on the race circumstances. So I think we all have to keep a close eye to Fierceness, and we can't put all of our eggs in one basket, because surely if things don't go the way this horse wants, we could see that obviously showing itself again in the race. So that is number 17, Fierceness. We'll move on to Catching Freedom, who again has the post position of number 4. Catching Freedom is actually who I've been watching on this entire Kentucky Derby trail, and despite what other people say, that it's not really a demotivating factor for me in regards to why I think highly of him. When it comes to Catching Freedom, I think he has a little bit more speed than Sierra Leone, and I think that will make him slightly more dangerous, as he can contend well enough with whatever the pace is most likely going to be. He ran very well in the longest prep race we've had on this road to the Kentucky Derby, which was the Louisiana Derby. He did very well in that race, and to me, that shows a little bit more of an indicator of how he can handle the Kentucky Derby distance and the pace that may come with it. I assume we'll have quite a bit of front runners contending for that pace. I'm not saying it's going to be record-breaking fractions, but I don't expect it to be slow. So again, I think Catching Freedom, he can run with these horses, and as long as he can pace himself, he's got a great, excellent rider that will be keeping him in good condition. And as long as he gets a okay trip, breaking from post position 4, not ideal, but also not the worst. It's not as if he's breaking from post position 1, which I think puts you at a pretty significant disadvantage if you're not a front running horse. So I think Catching Freedom will be okay. And again, he's actually technically my first selection, currently going off the morning line odds of 8-1. I've liked what I've seen in his prep races. I think this horse is always game. I don't really see an offer on switch with him like I do with Fierceness, and I think that's what makes the determining factor for me, and why I say Catching Freedom is personally who I'm looking at a little bit more. My third selection, breaking from post position 2, will be the very, very short priced Sierra Leone, going off at 3-1. This horse is a deep closer, so again, the price is not encouraging, but depending on what the pace is, and if those front runners kind of tire themselves out by the time we hit the stretch, we could be seeing a similar Kentucky Derby type of moment like Rich Strike. And I'm not saying in regards to the history of that, especially with everything that came with the Rich Strike correct story, but I'm saying a deep closer that benefits off of the other horses kind of running themselves tired, and you just kind of pick them off in the stretch, and then you find yourself contending for the win at the wire. That is more of the type of run I would see from Sierra Leone. I think depending on the pace, he could take advantage of that as a deep closer in the stretch, but again, that pace is probably going to have to be moving faster than usual. If not, I see him obviously sitting further towards the back, maybe just not having enough time to have a really strong surge to get to the front, especially if those front runners decide to do something that most of us don't expect them to do, and that's to slow that pace down to pretty lower than usual fractions, which then would save them obviously more energy to go once we hit that final turn heading into the stretch. So Sierra Leone I still think is a good pick because of that deep closing ability, and if you always have to have a deep closer in the Kentucky Derby because you don't know how the pace is going to go, and I don't think that's not a bad idea. But Sierra Leone, my third selection. Again, I don't like the price tag, so I'm looking more at maybe like a trifecta or a super with him, but that's Sierra Leone, third selection. And last but not least, the horse from Japan, Forever Young, drawing post position 11, going off at the morning line odds again of 10-1. Forever Young, such an interesting horse. When I say interesting, I mean in regards to this reoccurring theme that's appeared to happen with some of the horses from Japan, where they will prep in races that, in my honest opinion, aren't the best suited prep races to get ready for the Kentucky Derby. I kind of wish there was more of an initiative of racing those Japanese horses here in the Americas as opposed to racing them in Europe or somewhere else and then having to do that long travel of what usually is at least 4 to 6 weeks for most of these horses in the last, half decade, and they just never seem to be quite ready to take full advantage of the Derby. Sometimes they'll finish middle of the road, sometimes they finish closer, maybe to the top 6, but it doesn't appear that Forever Young is in the best position for that because it just hasn't happened yet. Now, of course, he ran exceptionally well in Dubai, but 5 weeks in between that race and when the Kentucky Derby will officially start, again, it hasn't worked out for horses for Japan, and that, to me, you kind of have to lean with until it's proven that that's not going to be the case. I think all of us, or not all of us, but those of us that like Forever Young, we are looking at it, again, with a little bit of biasness because we love the horse. Maybe we love Japanese horse racing. We want to see a Japanese horse win the Kentucky Derby, and Forever Young could be a really, really good selection for that. I think, in fact, of recent horses in recent time, Forever Young probably, in my honest opinion, has one of the better chances of actually winning. But again, that 5-week layoff in between the UAE Derby and the Kentucky Derby, that's a long time, and especially with the horse traveling from Japan to essentially the Middle East and then to the Americas, that is a lot of travel for a thoroughbred to be doing in just 5 weeks. And again, I would prefer for those type of horses to already be here 2 months prior to the Kentucky Derby to get acclimated and settled. I think Forever Young will be strong, and it would be absolutely amazing to see this horse win. But again, I just think the travel in between is just a little bit rough on the horses, and I genuinely would be shocked and surprised if this horse could blow away this Kentucky Derby field and win the Derby. I think he'll be in contention, but how close to the front, that depends on circumstances in the race. He will be my fourth selection, and that is Forever Young. So that will do it for my top 4 selections here for the 2024 150th Kentucky Derby. Feel free to let me know who you guys are looking at in the comment section below. I've had pretty good success the last 4 years with the Derby. More often than not, at least one selection or one combination of horses that I play does end up rewarding me with some sort of success, and that's just based off of just kind of how I've handicapped and I've done my research, and I've looked at how horses handle racers prior to the Derby and just seeing how that will translate. So these 4 horses, in my honest opinion, have the best chance to have a strong running in the Kentucky Derby. Of course, there are other horses in the field that could end up surprising us, and we've seen that happen over the years. But these 4, Forever Young, Sierra Leone, Catching Freedom, and Fierceness, I think are going to be one of the winners in this year's Kentucky Derby. Again, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Appreciate you guys for love and support. Make sure to subscribe here for more weekly horse racing content, gaming, and discussion related as we get into the summer. Looking forward to this Kentucky Derby. I'll try to live stream it if I can, and I will see you guys for 150th running of the 2024 Kentucky Derby.